Hi, in this video, I'm going to cover social login for Appgyver based apps. Now, in the last video, I covered Auth0 as a central identity management system for Appgyver. And I'm going to resume this video from the last topic. And in this video, I will be using Auth0 as a central identity management system, but it's not strictly necessary to use Auth0 as the central identity management system or social login system. You could directly integrate Facebook or Gmail or even GitHub. You can pick whatever social media platform you want to integrate, and you will be able to integrate it. But today, I will cover Auth0, and then in the next video, I'll cover the direct integration with Facebook and possibly Gmail and maybe GitHub. But you will get an idea. Once I do it you will get an idea and you will be able to use a different social media platform to integrate. So let's get started. Now, like I said, I will be using last video or the app which I have been building as a reference. So I will resume from that point. Now let me share my screen. So what you see here is the simple app. In the last video, I explained how we are using email ID and a password to log in on Auth0, and then we are fetching information from Firebase. We are using middleware proxy to proxy our requests from our Appgyver app to the backend in Firebase, and Auth0 is acting as an authentication central authentication system which will check your authentication and authorization. Now, we'll take this example. We'll add a button for social login or Facebook. Specifically, that's the example I'm going to take here. Let's start with the button, as I said. So I will just use the button and I will call it as Facebook. Now, when we click on this button, this should bring us to the Facebook login page. So for that, we need one more page. So let's go there and we will create a page. Let's call this as OAuth2. So we have this new page. We don't want the default text and a heading. And on this page, so again, we'll go back to our login page. So we'll finish off this page and then we'll move on to the next one. So here, when we click on this button, this should call our new page. So for that, we will use open page flow function, and then I'll connect that. And in here, I will define open my Auth0 or Auth2 page. And we'll say open it in model. So it opens as a pop-up, kind of pop-up. It doesn't navigate to the next screen. And that's it. So let's save. Now we'll go to the new page, Auth2. When we access this page, we are not authenticated. That means this page should be accessible as anonymous or unauthenticated. To do that, you go on a page, go to advanced property, and then here say allow page to be opened without authentication. So we see the login screen. If you don't do this, system is not going to show this page. So this is very important to check this button here. Now we'll do some alignment. So first of all, we'll make it in a center. We'll go to styles and we'll clear the padding. And I will tell you why we need to clear padding. It's not really a functionality thing, but it's nice to have. So let's clear all the paddings. Then we'll check stretch to viewport height and disable scrolling. And then we'll go to marketplace and we'll download something called web view component. Now I have already installed, but you can go there, you can pick this and then come back. You will see that component installed. So pick that, drag and drop here. Now go to layout, position, make it horizontally aligned in the center. Then height, width and height. Now, if you are familiar with React Native, in React Native, there is something called flex property or a style attribute. If we set it to 1, it will cover the whole screen. And the exact same thing is in Appgyver. That is under advanced. You go to grow and you put 1 here. As soon as you put 1, this is going to use the whole screen, or it's going to just expand to the whole screen. And save. So pretty much that's all style we need. Now, once we click on button, it will bring on this page. We have this view, a web view, where we will show user Facebook login screen. Now, how do we call Facebook login screen? We are using auth0. Now there are different ways of calling login page in auth0. You can use auth0 universal login page, and then there will be options to pick what service you want to pick, or you can directly integrate a specific social login page. So I'm going to take the second one where it will call the social login page directly from the provider, not the auth0 one. I will switch to auth0 now. Here is my auth0. Now, today I did not create application, or I did not create anything. I'm going to create from scratch. The very first thing you need is an API. So you need to create an API. I covered this in the last video. I explained how I did it, but now I'm going to show you how I did it. So let's go to create. We'll give this name as, let's call Facebook, or rather we'll say Appgyver social and Facebook. So that's the name of the API. Then you need to define an identifier. It could be a URL, your subdomain, domain, your host. So let's put the identifier as l2byte.com. And we'll leave the signing algorithm as RS256 and create. Now, as soon as we create API, this is going to create an application under application. So if you go in here, you will notice here we have a new application, type machine to machine, which is created by API. And we need both. We need application as well as we need an API. So we have now application and an API. We don't really need to do any changes in here. So you can set up permissions. We'll come to that point later when we will start testing. Under machine to machine applications, by default, system created this new application, and it authorized that application to use this API. So we don't have to do anything. And in application, so these are all default settings. We don't have to change anything. Only one thing we need to do it later when we will test again. When we will test, we'll come to this configuration or changes. This allowed callback URL. This allowed callback URL is the URL which will be called when user gets authenticated on a social platform. So let's say if you are on a Facebook, you got logged in and you are successfully authenticated, then Facebook is going to redirect to a certain URL or to a specific URL. That URL, you have to maintain it here. And we will maintain that after, once we start testing. That's one thing. The other thing we need to do here is we go down all the way. There's a section called advanced settings. And in advanced settings, go to the grant types. Now, by default, system creates a client credential grant. That means you have to use your client ID and a client secret to log in. But we don't want to use client ID and a secret. We want to use the authorization code, or rather access token. So let's check these in a password. So then you can, once your solution is working, you can come back and uncheck the ones you don't need. So let's save that. Okay. So we have our application configured. Our API is ready. Now it comes to the URL. auth0 has extensive documentation on how to call universal URL, how to call a specific social login page, or how to call a specific social media provider. I will leave a link down below and you can read in detail. I'm going to use a link which I have already used in a test example, but you will find the reference for that link. And before going there, since we are here, if you're doing it this first time, or if you're using social login from auth0 the very first time, then you need to add your social media platforms here. And it's pretty simple. You just go there, create connection, and then you pick whatever connection you want to pick, and pretty much that's it. Now it says there are 3 applications allowed. let me go and check where's that setting here. So our Appgyver social Facebook is authorized application, one of the authorized applications for Facebook. So we are good on that part. So this covers our Auth0 configuration. Now we'll switch back to our Appgyver. Now here, when we call this web view, this should call the Facebook login page. So for that, I have a link. I already copied the link to save time. So let's go back. Click on your web view, go to your properties. The very first attribute is the URL. So go to URL, select formula, or you can put a static, but I prefer doing formula because you can see your content here. Now, the first part, this part, is the domain. So in your Auth0, if you go to your application, go open your application. Under application, you will see domain. So this domain is the one you need to put it here as a host. Then authorize, this part is the constant. A response type, you can have a token or a code. So we are going to get this token and we will use this token for querying Firebase. Then we have a client ID. Now this client ID should be the client ID which we just created. So let's go and pick the client ID from our Auth0 application. So this is our, let me do one thing. Let me switch the desktop so it's easier. I don't have to navigate 3 pages. So here, this is the client ID. That's the from application. You go there, you pick your client ID and then put it here. And I will leave a link down below so you can refer. Okay, hold on. I think I did not clear the entire string. So I'm going to put it here now. Yeah, it's good. Now that covers the client ID. Then we need audience. And again, why do we need audience? You can read more on how Auth2 works. I'm just going to explain what you need to enter here. So audience is the one which you created under, or identifier under API. So when we created API, we entered our identifier. That identifier is audience. And actually it shows audience if you see outside. Once you select APIs, here it says API audience, but when you go in, it says identifier. I don't know why they have 2 different labels, but this is the audience we need. So let's go back and then we put our audience here. And I already entered the same audience. So let's leave it. Then you can define scope. So scope is something you want to do after authentication. Let's say you have access token, you are successfully authenticated on Auth0, but you want to extract user profile. Now without scope, you will not have a permission to access user info API endpoint. So you can pass the scope and then the scope is gonna let you access the user info. And we need user info to get the UUID for Firebase when we create a custom token. So let's pass the scope as an OpenID. Then a connection. Now this is where you can define which social login platform you want to use. In our case, we are using Facebook. So you see here Facebook, but if you are using, let's say, Google, there will be Google -OAuth2. Now the next part is redirect URI. This is the part I was explaining earlier. Redirect URI is the URI where Facebook redirects after authentication, after successful authentication. So once user is successfully authenticated, the URL will redirect back to this URI. And this URI, what you see here, is a localhost callback. So let's take that, and you can maintain whatever you want. In this case, I maintain localhost callback. Take that, go to your application, open your application, Auth0 application, and go under allowed callback URLs. Now, if you don't maintain this, Auth0 is going to complain that you did not maintain localhost callback. You will see an error. You can take that. You can, again, you go back and you maintain that and it should work fine. So let's maintain that and save. Let's go back. And then we have a state here. In short, state is a cross-site reference forgery, CSRF token. It's a token you send with the request and you expect the same token in the response or after the redirect. This is to prevent the cross-site reference forgery. you can use an event in WebView called component on location change. So as soon as we change, as soon as the redirect happens, the WebView will register that as a on location change, and it will trigger this event. Now here we need to parse the string. So for that, we will use a JavaScript function. Let's drag and drop JavaScript function here. We connect. We'll go in JavaScript function and we'll connect our input to output from output value of another node. And in the receive event, we'll connect it to event object and save and update. So all here we have to do is we have to identify the URL and we have to parse it and extract the access token. Now, I'm not going to write the code here. I will put it in on my GitHub. But since I already did this as part of my test, so I'm just going to copy paste from there. So this is our logout. Don't want that. Auth2. Here. This is the Java script, or this is the flow function, and I will explain what it is. So the input is an object received in an event which has URL property. So we are looking if in my URL, if I have localhost callback and $ access token, that means I have access token and the call is being redirected after successful authentication. Split that with making two parts at scope and access token. Split at scope, take the access token first part, and that part is a code. If we find a code, then set code available true, return code and a code available as true. Now, by default, when we create a flow function, the flow function creates result as a return. So let's change that. Delete the result, add property code. That's the property for the return code. And then we should have another property for code available to check whether we have a code or not. Let's create that second property, code available. Now this is a Boolean, so let's go and change type to true or false and update and save. Okay, so this gives us the code. It will check whether there is a code and then it will tell us a state whether there is a code or not. Yes, true or false. Now, once we have a code, then we can assign if condition here. And then in a condition, we can say output value from another node, which is our function, which we just wrote. And then we bind to code available. Now, if this condition is true, that means we have a code. If it is false, that means we have an error. When it is true, we can dismiss the initial view and we can mark it as successful authentication and we can move on. Before that, we will store this code, access token, in app variable, and then we'll dismiss and we'll call successful authentication. So for that, you can go to app variables. You can create a variable. I already did it. It's called auth0 token. So we'll go back here, and then I'm going to use set app variable on successful. Set this app variable auth0 token and assign a value. Again, output from another node, which is a function, and assign code and save. It is true. We have set a value now. Now is the time to dismiss our initial view. And then we connect to our dismiss initial view. So this covers our authentication part. Now, if I try, the solution should work. But instead that, what we are going to do is, I showed you an earlier demo where I'm extracting information from Firebase. So let's use that. Now we'll focus on our user list. Now here, technically on page mount, we can write our logic to extract records. For simplicity, I'm going to put it under refresh. Now, once we are logging, we will be on this page. I will press on refresh and this should go and fetch the records from Firebase. Now, again, I'm going to use my code, which I used it in a previous example. For that, I will go here in my sign in. We will use this and we'll modify for our social login. We have to modify because the first part, to get the access token from auth0, is already covered because we are getting that from Facebook login. So let's copy that. We'll go back to our Firebase user list here. On refresh, we'll connect the call to auth0 Firebase authentication, and I will change this flow function. I think it's here, edit, auth0 social Firebase, auth0, let's call Facebook Firebase with middleware. And we need to change a few things in the function, flow function. First of all, we don't need, we have auth0 token, Firebase web key, custom endpoint. Oh, I made a change. So does this have, oh, this is a changed version. Okay, save. I modified that function and I will put this function again on GitHub. You can just download it. Now, instead those four, we just need auth0 token because the first part to get the auth0 token is already done. Then we need a Firebase web key because this is what we are going to send to Firebase. Then custom endpoint. This is the proxy where we will be sending our token. So only 3 parameters. And in the code, I removed the part where we were getting token from auth0. Now here we have just 2 steps. First step to get the access token. And second step is to get the ID token from Google API. And I did not change the output. So let's save that. Exit isolation. Once we have that, this will give us the Firebase ID token. Now we take that token and we'll set it in our Firebase, where is it? Firebase ID token. And the value is output from another function, which is our Firebase auth0 Firebase authentication ID token, and save. So this is where, this is the function which is giving us the token. Now we take that token and then we make a call to HTTP directly to the Firebase. Here, this is a direct call to Firebase. We are not using proxy anymore. Proxy is only to get the Firebase custom token. And in the header, we have to pass that our token, the Firebase ID token, to make a call. So we store that as an app variable, Firebase token ID token. So I'm sending that as a bearer here, save. Once we make HTTP call, this is going to respond back. This, like I mentioned in earlier video, this is the function which flattens that. And here we will we'll connect it again. So HTTP response in a JSON format. The output is fine. Update. This is going to set the user list variable. So this is a formula, so it's not a valid formula. So let's select the output of another node, output function result. So that's the one, and save. Since this is on a second page, we don't need to dismiss. And these two are just alerts if there is any error, and we can map these two. So this is HTTP error. And this one is also, no, we did that. This one, the second port. Let's leave the JSON format and save. Okay. So if everything works, if everything is proper, we should see the output. Now, I just, how do I connect my phone? Today I'm using Mac and I did not really use my phone on Mac. So give me a minute. I'll connect my phone and I'll come back. Here is the Appgyver preview app, which you can see it on my phone. Now we will open the social media login app. That's the one which we built, and then we'll tap on Facebook. Yeah, before that, yeah. So that should be good. And let me enter my password and log in. So if you're doing it this for first time, the Facebook requires your permission to grant the authorization to use Auth0 as one of the app. You just accept it here, and our logic worked. That is why we are on this page. That means it found a code and then dismissed the initial view, and we are on this page after the authentication. Now let's try to refresh and see. So we are missing one of the tokens somewhere. So let me see what is not connected here. We have this. Oh, here, right here. This flow function requires auth0 token as an input, and I did not map that. Our auth0 token is an app variable here. So I will uh, map that and save. And then where is the window? Oh, oh, it's here. And then we'll log in again and refresh. And there we have the output. So this is how you can integrate Facebook or any social login platform. Now, today in this example, I used Auth0 as a central identity management system, but it's strictly not required. In next video, I will integrate Facebook directly, where you don't have to configure anything in Auth0. Uh, you can log in or authenticate yourself directly using Facebook instead going through Auth0 and then Facebook. I hope this video helps you to build app using social login. If you have any suggestions, comments, or if you want to recommend something, please feel free to put it down in a comment, and I will respond whenever I get a time. Thank you, and see you in the next video.